Good morning, Starshines. My name is DH, my pronouns are they, them, and I play cozy games. And I knit and crochet and do a bit of bullet journaling, and some other stuff too. Every Monday evening on my Twitch channel, twitch.tv/thecozydh, is our weekly crafty chat. Bring your project, bring something to stay hydrated with, but most importantly, just bring yourself. Each week, I'll post highlights from the stream, any tips I give, or just show off what I'm working on. To see more and join the conversation, follow me on Twitch to know when Crafty Chat goes live, and then join us. I can't wait to see ya. We've got a project. We're going to be working on a project. So this, if you will remember our last stream, I was working on the flax sweater by Tin Can Knits. You can tell it's a flax sweater by the signature garter stitch band on the arm and the raglan shaping. So I was working on the body. I think I was just about here on this band of color, and I've actually finished the body all the way. It's a little bit hard to show, so I actually have a, let's see if this works. Yes, so this is a picture I took earlier of the whole thing up on one of our lovely mannequin friends who live in our house. Their names are Hansel and Derek. So Hansel here is showing off the lovely sweater. You can see the gradients. I just did a simple 1x1 ribbing bind off at the 1x1 twisted rib on the bottom, and then a very simple what's called a lace bind off. It's slip knit, slip the stitch back to the last needle, and then slip knit together with the stitch you just knit. Anyways, it's a very lovely, stretchy, fast bind off. I am 100% over sewn bind off, so this is what we went. It gives you this really lovely knitted edge. Come on, camera, focus. Must focus. There we go. It gives you a really lovely knitted edge like that. So the body is done. It fits beautifully. It fits. It's got just a little bit of ease. It's a lovely drapey fabric. So we are now moving on to the sleeves. You can see I did the body first, and then the sleeves are on interchangeable needle cables with stoppers. So all I have to do to work on these is pop some needles on these and just keep going. However, there is an issue, and I'll tell you guys what the issue is. The issue is I have 2 sleeves to make, and I have this much yarn left. So we're gonna have a short sleeve sweater because this is all of the yarn. This yarn is Loops and Thread Shimmer Shawl, which was one of the Loops and Thread special, I want to say 4 years ago. Looking at 2019. It has long since been discontinued. I have so far never found a dupe for it. This is the very last of it that I have. So this is what we're working with. So what we're going to do today, and I saved this for the stream because I thought people might be interested in seeing kind of how I deal with this. I've talked before about I am what you call a large man, and I often find myself having to adapt patterns, make do with less yarn than I need to make a garment that fits my body, modify on the fly, that kind of thing. So this is one thing that comes up occasionally is this pattern is written for 20-inch sleeves. I don't have enough yarn for 20-inch sleeves. I have to figure out what I'm going to do. So in this case, what I'm going to do is because this is a raglan sleeve, we've already got the beginnings of the sleeve cap. So on me, this falls about halfway between my shoulder. Sorry, this part of the fabric falls about halfway between my shoulder and my elbow. So all I'm trying to do right now is get enough fabric to get to my elbow, maybe an inch past, and then we'll call it good. So it is math time, which is exactly what y'all tuned in to watch on a lovely, relaxing Monday afternoon is we're going to do some math. So I have this small digital scale. It's from Next Tech. I bought this scale at Radio Shack, so that'll tell you how long ago I purchased it. I don't know what the original function for this scale was, but if you would like my advice on finding a scale to measure yarn in increments less than a gram, check out your local head shop. They will have the most accurate small gram scales. That's always my advice. And when people say, oh, we don't have legal cannabis here, you probably still have head shops. So I'm just going to weigh my yarn here. The only problem with this scale is that it's a little bit small. So sometimes I'll put a bowl on here to get the actual weight, but usually with a cake I can kind of get it to rest enough that I can weigh. The other reason I like this scale is that it will give me a little beep when it has weighed whatever it is, and then the measurement will stay on the screen. Okay, so we've got 79.2 grams. So I'm going to wind off 2 cakes at 38 grams, 39 grams. See, this is why I invited you all here, so that you can help me with the math. So if I've got 79.2 grams and I want approximately half, that's 39.5 grams per cake. Okay. And again, this ball winder it's a pretty standard royal ball winder, but it is also ancient. Again, it's at least 14 years old. So it's holding up remarkably well. I actually don't use a cake winder very often. I prefer to ball by hand. If you've seen my previous streams, you've seen like most of my balls look like that. I've heard these referred to as granny balls. I hate that term. They're just balls. It's a ball of yarn. I prefer this put up, except when I'm working with striped yarn or anything in a gradient, because it's easier to see the progression of colors in a cake like this. So what we're going to do is I'm just going to start winding and then occasionally weigh what we have left here. And then when this hits, let's say 40 grams, I'm going to snip the yarn and then rewind that cake, and then we'll have 2 approximate 39.5 40-gram cakes. And I will start knitting with the smaller of the 2. So I am going to turn down my microphone a little bit because I feel like this is going to be loud. All right, so I'm going to set this larger cake aside. We're going to use this one second, and that way I'm going to use this one up all the way to the end, and then however long this sleeve ends up being, I will knit with this sleeve, and then we'll have a little bit of yarn left over. So this one's going to the side. So this is where we're starting, and this is my yarn. So you can see, this is why I like using cakes for gradient yarns. So we've got, it's purple in the middle, and then it fades to this light pink. And then this is the sleeve that, so I'm going to pick up and start knitting these stitches. So I'm thinking I'm going to start from the pink and work down towards the purple. I think that might be the way to go about things. What I did was I put them onto an interchangeable needle cord. So interchangeable needles, they come with the cord and the needle separate, and then you swap out what you need according to what you need. So this is already on a cord. It's ready to be knit. I just need to put the needle tips on. So that's what this is here for. This is my needle tip. I've got all my cords in here. I've got all my needle tips here, and then the bigger sizes are on the back side. So this is a 5mm sweater. So I'm just going to grab my 5mm tips. need this anymore. So interchangeable sets usually come with a key, which is just a straight piece of metal. There's a very small hole in the cord itself that the key goes through, and that's just to give you some leverage to tighten or loosen. So when I was knitting, the way this is a raglan construction sweater. So when I was knitting, I started here at the collar, and then I increased at these points. So this is the front of the sweater, and then you increase on the sleeves, you increase out so until you reach the dimension of the sleeve that you need, and then these go onto a holder to be knit later. And then for the armpit area, to make sure there's enough room, you cast on stitches along the bottom. So I knit, put these on holders, cast on, and then kept knitting, and then created this. So the first thing we have to do is pick up stitches, and usually what I do for sleeves is I will start picking up stitches here in the center of the armpit area, the underarm, in the center of the underarm, and make this the beginning of my round. And then I will do all of my increases or decreases, well, decreases usually for sleeves, on either side of that line. However, because these sleeves are going to be so incredibly short, I'm actually not going to do any decreases at all, because usually I would knit about 2 to 3 inches without decreases, and I honestly think about 2 to 3 inches is all that I'm going to get out of this little guy. So no decreases. So, which is going to be good because I used a 16-inch cable, and my upper arm measurement is 22 inches, and this sleeve will be about 24 inches because I like a little bit of ease on my sleeves. So I can knit the whole thing in the round. I don't need to use magic loop. I don't need to do 2 circulars. I can just do the whole thing. Zoom, zoom, zoom. What someone I've heard refer to as NASCAR knitting, where you just go around and around and around really fast in a circle. So let me just, at this point I should probably consult the pattern and see how many underarm stitches I cast on. But I can also just count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 12. Okay. So we're going to count, so I cast on 12 underarm stitches, so we're going to count 6 stitches in. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So this is the center of our underarm. Do I have a stitch marker? I do. So I'm just going to mark that with a stitch marker so I don't forget. Okay, and then we're just going to add our new yarn. Usually I would rewind this so that I'm working from the center of the cake, but it's so tiny. I leave the tail long, I loop it over my needle, and I just start working with it. So this yarn tail will be woven in. I will probably knot it to my working yarn at some point, and yeah, it'll just get worked in, and then when I'm done I will weave it in, so that's just drawing it back and forth through stitches, and it'll be nice and secure. So first thing I'm doing is I'm picking up 6 stitches because we said that we had 12 stitches for the underarm. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then I usually skip kind of the last stitch and do one in the join, because there's this huge stretch of yarn, this huge stretch of space without any stitches. So I'll usually do one just kind of in there instead to draw it up a little bit closer. You can find 412 different tutorials on making sure you don't get gaps when you're picking up underarm stitches. My tip for that is sew them closed. There's no real good way that I've found that 100% eliminates underarm hole stitches in the knitting process, but a little bit of yarn A little bit of yarn and a tapestry needle can go a long way. So we're just going to knit around. We just have to knit around to this point, and then pick up 6 more stitches. Okay, so I've knit to this point, and you can see that there's this garter stitch band. So garter stitch is kind of the first pattern stitch that most people learn, because it's if you just knit back and forth and just knit, you'll create garter stitch. However, because we're in the round, I have to knit a row and then purl a row and then knit a row and purl a row. So I'm going to grab some stitch markers and just mark off where this band starts and stops so that I don't miss it when I have to do purl rows. So I just have some of the little light bulb stitch markers. These are my favorite for marking stuff in the middle of projects. I have some fancier ones here. You can see we've got all types. I love my big skull one. This one is huge. I usually use the fancier ones to mark like the start or end of a round, or to mark where as a progress keeper, to say like I started here and now I need to knit to this point. Yeah, this is actually the tag from something that we got around Halloween time at a home goods store, and this was on the this was like attached to the price tag, so I stole it and put it on a stitch marker because it's gigantic and I love it. So let's just pop a stitch marker on here, and I can tell by looking at it that these stitches are purl stitches, which means that my next row I just have to knit across it. Learning to read your knitting is a really great skill to learn. And that's basically just being able to tell what you did in the row below by looking at what the stitches look like in the fabric. And it's a skill that comes with practice, a lot of practice, and sometimes it's hard for anyone to do. I just knit around, and now I need to pick up the rest of the underarm stitches. If I'm going a little bit slow, it's because I have to turn the rest of the sweater over as I'm working, which is just something that happens when you're starting sleeves. I usually prefer doing the sleeves before the body for that reason, because it's easier to flip sleeves around as you're working the body than to flip the body around when you're working sleeves. But as I said in the last stream, I knew I was going to run out of yarn, so I needed to figure out how much yarn I would have left. So now I'm just going to pick up the other 6 stitches from this underarm along here. And again, I'm going to start in the corner here. So let me see if I can get this a little bit closer to the microphone, no, to the camera. So my first stitch, although it really should be here to line up with that stitch, I'm actually going to pick it up here. And that reduces the holes a little bit. But like I said, what I really recommend for reducing holes is just taking a little piece of yarn afterwards and sewing them up if you have holes. And if you have a little tiny hole and someone comments on it, what are they doing that close to your armpit is really the question. So that's one stitch we picked up. So the way that the sleeves are usually constructed in a seamless sweater, which is this is what it is, like I'm not sewing up any seam. So yes, I started up here and then I knit down, increasing for the sleeves, and then I got to this point where these stitches were wide enough to accommodate my sleeve width, and then I set them aside and cast on created 12 new stitches to cover. If you think about the underarm of a shirt, so that'll cover basically the armpit area, and then knit down. So when you go back, you pick up these stitches, you pick up the however many stitches you cast on for the underarm, but then usually at the very corner where the original stitches and your new picked up stitches are, it's very common to create a little hole there. And it's super common. A lot of people have different techniques that they use to combat that. But like I said, my best advice for that is to just sew it up when you're done. It's going to be the most secure, and it's pretty much invisible, as long as you're not using like the complete opposite color yarn and doing a really poor job of stitching. But I'm not a great sewist, and I can do it. Okay, so we're back at the beginning. I've just slipped a stitch marker on here. Very, seasonally appropriate Christmas sweater one, Christmas mitten. So now all we have to do is go around in a circle until we run out of yarn. So I have, unfortunately it's not that simple, because I do have the ribbing here, which is 6 rows and then a bind off, so basically 7 rows. So I need to save enough yarn to do 7 rows, which means, you guessed it guys, we're gonna do some more math. Okay, so I'm just gonna weigh this little tiny cake. Okay. So this weighs 34.5, let me just see if I can grab something to write on. 0.5 grams. My pen is dry, which is not, which, it's from the dollar store, so what can I expect? Okay, so we've done 34.5 grams. So now we need to knit 7 rows, and then we're going to weigh this again and see how much yarn is left, and that will tell it, and then subtract the 2 numbers, and that will tell us how much yarn it takes to knit 7 rows. And that's how much yarn I need to save, but I'll probably save like a few grams extra. This is, of course, working on the assumption that I'll be able to knit more than 7 rows with more than half of this. Because this does look like quite a bit of yarn, but I know that it's not. It's a deceptive amount of yarn. But what I was saying, one of the things Binks was loving on is I have a book stand on my desk, which holds whatever book I'm currently using. So this is my crafting log. It's in a Hocus Pocus notebook. I have a Hocus Pocus notebook and a cat named Binks. I think you can see a theme here. So this is just my spread for this particular sweater. I've got all my notes on the construction, and over here is like what needles I'm using, what yarn I'm using. I have the label from the yarn here, where the pattern is from, all those details, and then when I'm finished, this big blank space here, I'm going to put in a picture of the finished object. So I'm just going to write down how much yarn I had left. 79.5 grams. Okay, for short sleeves. As you can see, I'm actually running out of room to leave notes if I want to do that. So let's see. We have, and then I'll just add more notes as we go. So I like having a physical space where it's like, okay, this is what happens in this space, and this is what we do in this space. And then I also feel like for me, I'm using it as a place to edit stream footage and make my stream graphics and that kind of thing. Which it's a hobby. It's not work, but it's one thing that it almost feels work-like, in that like I have a to-do list, and when I'm not working on it, I kind of feel guilty and like I should be doing it instead of something else. So having a dedicated space for it and being able to be like, okay, I'm in this space, I'm doing the thing. I leave the space, I'm no longer doing the thing, is going to be really helpful. I started it in November and I worked on it like crazy. I worked on it like crazy for a little while, and then I put it down again. I started it because like I was starting to get really, really, really sick, and I kind of wanted a sweater that would be my like while I was sick journey sweater, and it would be for me, and it would be, you know, something that would remind me of this time in my life, but as more of a transformative time than as a bad time. So that's why I said a month and a half, because that would bring me to 3 months fainting free. But yeah, I really think it's going to be done before then. So I had done the yoke. So basically the collar up to, I had done the collar up to this point, so this much in November, and then in the last 2 weeks, just dropping stuff all over the place. In the last 2 weeks, I did the body, so all of this, and now I'm doing the sleeves. I have a like commercial hoodie that I absolutely love. So what I did a little while ago when I started making clothes for myself is I measured the hoodie, and now I just knit clothes to those measurements, which makes it really easy, because then I'm not like knitting and then trying it on and then knitting and then trying it on. It's like I know how long I like stuff, so I just knit it that long. It's great. But my knitting goal is to reduce the amount of physical space that my stash takes up. Right now it is in 6.5 26-liter bins. So like just those clear Sterilite bins, the ones that fit perfectly into like the IKEA Expedit. So I have 6.5 of those that have my current whips and works in progress and my stash in it, and I really want to get that down to like 4. That's kind of my goal by the end of the year, is to get it down to 4. If I could get it down to 3, that would be amazing. So I'm tackling all my big projects first to try and just like get them out of the way, because like, you know, you can have 6 pairs of socks on the go, but it takes up, you know, a quarter of a bin for that. Whereas I have one sweater that takes up an entire bin on its own. So I think that was the 5th row. So we've got 2 more, and then we'll weigh our yarn. We might get more distance out of this than I think we will, but definitely going to be weighing obsessively as we continue working on this. Okay, so I'm going to see if I can count from the pickup stitches. So, that's my pickup. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay, so we need to stop and measure. Okay, so oops. So we are at 24 grams. So the last one was 35. Where did my little piece of paper go? I probably knocked it off. Sandy took it with him. Alright. So it's 37.5. We're at 24. So that took 13.5 grams for 7 rows. Right? That makes sense? So we're at just about 2 grams a row. So I can probably do... that would be another 12 rows, but I don't want to push it that far. So 13 and 5/10. Thank you. appreciate it. So 24 grams will get us approximately 12 rows. We have to do 7 rows of bind off, so that would be 5. But I want to leave us a little bit of wiggle room, so I'm only going to do 4 more rows. Does that math check out? So 4 more rows, and then we will start the ribbing. So I was a little bit clickbaity in my title. I don't think I'm going to finish this today on stream. I'm going to go for about another hour, but I don't think I'm going to finish this, but considering how much we've already done and how little there is to go, probably going to finish it soon. Yeah, well, if we play Yarn Chicken, we play Yarn Chicken. It's only knitting. All I have to do is rip it back a little bit. That's why I like knitting over some other crafts, because yarn, you can, unless you're steeking it, which is when you actually cut your piece of knitting, you can just pull it back and redo it. You're not wasting any materials. You're wasting nothing but time, really. But especially quilting, I tried quilting, and not only can I not sew a straight line to save my life with a sewing machine, cannot sew a straight line with a sewing machine, but we get so anxious about cutting the fabric, because as soon as you cut it, it's cut. Like, you can't go back and uncut it. And like with knitting, I trust my skills enough to be able to fix any mistakes, or be able to adapt on the fly. So we'll do 4 more rows of just the plain stockinette with this garter band, and then we'll do the ribbing and the bind off, and I think that should be a pretty decent length for the sleeves, like for a short sleeve anyways. I did the other day find, like, I keep saying that this is all the yarn I have left. I did find another like half skein of the shimmer shawl, so I could have eked out like maybe another few inches of sleeve, but the yarn is black and yellow, so it looks good on its own, but it does not fit with the rest of the sweater. Yeah, it's amazing what you can get done when you're hyper-focusing. I wish hyper-focus was like a superpower that you could turn on and off. Because, like, so much could get accomplished. So I mostly grew up in Ontario, but just, you know, picking up from my parents, I say yarn and car weird, and I do things like say side by each instead of side by side, and I point at things with my middle finger, which is a very specific, like, down east mannerism that seems incredibly rude up here, but I just do it automatically. Yeah, French Canadians do the mobile H's. Yeah, if I'm pointing something out on like a menu or something, I'll do it with the middle finger. Like, I don't know what it is, so yeah. Like, I don't know why, but it's just natural for me to do that. Like, if I were, I'm gonna show you guys. I'm not flipping you off, I promise. But if I was like explaining what was going on, I'd just be like, okay, so we got this thing here, and then this thing here, and then this thing here. That's just the way my hand does it. I promise. So I was like pointing at something on a menu, I would use my middle finger. I know, it probably seems so rude, but like it's completely unintentional. And it's just naturally how my fingers move. Yeah. I think part of it might be that we do the Tim Hortons. It's part of the Tim Hortons point, because like if you're holding your Timmies, right, you got to use these two fingers to hold on to it, and then you can gesture with these fingers, right? Oh, the Timmie's finger is such a thing. I went to Mexico when I was in college, and we had a like Canadian who lived in the city in Mexico, and she had to unlearn the Timmie's wave, because for them, if you're like crossing the street in front of you, if you're crossing the street in front of someone, you wave at them, right? But you do kind of like a this wave, like you're holding something. But that's rude in Mexico. You have to kind of go like this, which seems rude to us. But for Canadians, we do it because it's like you're holding a cup and you're kind of waving with your other fingers. But that's rude in Mexico, and for them, what's polite is to kind of do this sharp gesture, which seems very rude to us. But that's what the polite thing to do when you're crossing the street is. So, the more you know. Because it's not just that we have a Timmie's cup, because like coffee cups are an American thing too. But we have to be polite while holding our coffee. This is the theory I'm going with, and this is the hill that I will die on, is that a lot of our cultural gestures are because they need to be carried out while holding a cup of Timmie's. That's it for the video. If you like the content, please like the video. Subscribe for more cozy gaming and crafting highlights. If you want to see more, join the community on twitch.tv/thecozydh, or check out our Discord. Thanks for watching, and keep twinkling below, Starshine.